Hi, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Green. For the very first time since taking office, President Trump is publicly holding his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, responsible for meddling in the 2016 election. Now, in an interview with CBS Evening News anchor Jeff Glor, the president said he told Putin to stop meddling when the two leaders met in private. But critics say the president should have confronted Putin during their news conference in Helsinki. Instead, the president gave weight to Putin's denial of election meddling. A day later, the president walked that statement back by saying he supports the conclusion that Russia did interfere. Now, a CBS News poll finds less than 1/3 of Americans approve of the way President Trump handled the meeting, but 68% of Republicans approve, compared to only 8% of Democrats. Here's what the president told Jeff Glor about that meeting.
You say you agree with U.S. intelligence that Russia meddled in the election in 2016.
Yeah, and I've said that before, Jeff. I have said that numerous times before. And I would say that that is true, yeah.
But you haven't condemned Putin specifically. Do you hold him personally responsible?
Well, I would, because he's in charge of the country, just like I consider myself to be responsible for things that happen in this country. So certainly, as the leader of a country, you would have to hold him responsible, yes.
What'd you say to him?
Very strong on the fact that we can't have meddling, we can't have any of that. Now, look, we're also living in a grown-up world. Will a strong statement, President Obama supposedly made a strong statement. Nobody heard it. What they did hear is the statement he made to Putin's very close friend. And that statement was not acceptable. Didn't get very much play, relatively speaking, but that statement was not acceptable. But I let him know we can't have this. We're not going to have it, and that's the way it's going to be. We had a very strong meeting on so many different points. And, and I've said, and I campaigned on it, getting along with Russia and China, by the way, and other countries is a very good thing, not a very bad thing.
But he denies it. So if you believe U.S. intelligence agencies, is Putin lying to you?
I don't want to get into whether or not he's lying. I can only say that I do have confidence in our intelligence agencies as currently constituted. I think that Dan Coats is excellent. I think that Gina is excellent. I think we have excellent people in the agencies. And when they tell me something, it means a lot.
Coats says the threat is ongoing. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'd accept him. I mean, he's an expert. This is what he does. He's been doing a very good job. I have tremendous faith in Dan Coats. And if he says that, I would accept that. I will tell you, though, it better not be. It better not be.
Have you talked to Coats since you got back?
Yeah, I have, sure.
What do you say?
Just talk generally speaking. Yeah, he agrees with the statement you made, and I go along with him. He's a he's a great guy. He's a great patriot. He loves his country. And he's only going to say what he truly believes. And the information that's given to him is that.
Do you think any intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, are out to get you?
Well, certainly in the past, it's been terrible. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at Hayden, you look at Comey, you look at McCabe, you look at Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page. You look at other people in the FBI that have been fired, that are no longer there. Certainly, I can't have any confidence in the past, but I can have a lot of confidence in the present and the future, because it's getting to be now where we're putting our people in. But in the past, no, I have no confidence in a guy like Brennan. I think he's a total lowlife. I have no confidence in Clapper. Clapper wrote me a beautiful letter when I first went to office, and it was really nice. And then all of a sudden, he's gone haywire because they got to him and they probably got him to say things that maybe he doesn't even mean. But no, I certainly don't have confidence in past people. You look at what's happened. Take a look at all of the shenanigans that have gone on. Very hard to have confidence in that group.
On Saturday, you told us your doctrine is strength and achieving peace through strength.
Right.
After Helsinki, Lindsey Graham said you showed weakness.
Well, Lindsey Graham, you're going to have to. Let me just. I totally disagree. I think I did great at the news conference. I think it was a strong news conference. You have people that said you should have gone up to him, you should have walked up and started screaming in his face. We're living in the real world. Okay, nobody's been as tough with Putin as I have. You look at all of the other things that I've done with respect to Russia that nobody else has done, including sanctions, the biggest sanctions ever imposed on Russia. It's just a fake news deal. They love this narrative. Even you're wasting a lot of time talking about Russia. Nobody has been tougher on Putin and on Russia than Donald Trump.
CBS Evening News anchor Jeff Glor joins us now with more on his interview with the president. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. I have a ton of questions for you. You know, we heard the president say to you that he had strong words in that meeting in regards to Russian meddling. He didn't give us specifics about what he said, but did you ask him, well, why didn't he repeat that when he was on the world stage in front of the cameras and Putin was standing right beside him?
And we may never get those specifics. Yeah, I think it was there was a different tone that we saw at the news conference after, as opposed to what we saw in this interview yesterday. We may never get that readout from what happened inside that meeting because it was just the president and President Vladimir Putin and the translators. The White House has not given a readout, and neither one of these leaders has discussed in depth what they talked about. The president did say yesterday that he did speak to Vladimir Putin about meddling, about North Korea, about Israel, and about nuclear weapons. Beyond that, not too many details.
How does he feel about all the criticism that he received, particularly from Republicans? It took them a while, but then there was sort of a groundswell of criticism.
He says, he said he didn't understand what in his words, the fuss was about, immediately after the news conference, and that's why they clarified and said he said would when he meant to say wouldn't, when he was talking about blaming Russia for meddling in the 2016 election. I think traditionally there has been this tendency to associate the words meddling and collusion. And then I think there's an attempt to make from folks close to him to make a distinction between the two. In other words, there could have been meddling, which all U.S. intelligence agencies agree there was and still is, but there may not have been collusion. Not saying there was one way or the other. I think there's an attempt by some for him to make that distinction. He did on Tuesday and he did yesterday.
In your interview, he talked about former intelligence officials James Clapper and John Brennan. He said that John Brennan was kind of a good guy, and then they got to him, whoever he sort of means by that. He has, it appears, some disdain for these men, but he clearly valued their opinion when he was choosing Gina Haspel, right? He valued that they felt highly, or had that high opinion of her. Did he talk any more about this disdain and where it comes from?
I think he feels stung and betrayed by them. And yeah, there is a disdain. There is absolutely no love lost between the president and some of these former members of the intelligence community, because he believes that they were either out to get him during the election itself or they're out to get him now.
You pressed him on the Mueller investigation.
I asked him about Mueller. I asked him whether his mind had been changed about whether or not he was willing to sit down for an interview, whether things had changed in the last 6 months. He didn't address that specifically. And then I said, but are you willing to sit? He said, yes, my lawyers are working on that.
Yeah, he seemed to sort of defer to his lawyers over and over again, but reiterated that he was always willing to.
Which has been the line for some time.
Right.
And I think some of the communications, he wants the investigation to wrap up. Those around him want the investigation to wrap up. The question is, will it wrap up before he actually agrees, whether or not he does, to an interview?
I want to circle back actually to the question that I asked you before about John Brennan. You said that there's a feeling that, and James Clapper, that these people are out to get him. Why would they be out to get him? What's at the core of that, does he think?
Because they disagree with his politics, his outlook, his approach, all of it. I think that people don't have to get along in politics, right?
That's true, but you don't have to be out to get anyone either.
Yeah, well, listen, I think the president certainly takes a lot of this very personally.
Yeah.
And listen, in fairness, John Brennan and James Clapper and some others have said some very strong things on Twitter and in other places. And so that war of words between them and the president continues.
But these are men who have worked for different administrations. They have, at least in their professional life, shown themselves not to be politically biased or to be political in any way. Obviously, the president doesn't see it that way.
In the past, I think he would certainly say they are now.
Interesting. Okay, you asked him about the 2020 2020 presidential election and who he would like to run against.
I did. Yes, he said. So there's been some question here about he obviously formed a campaign, was looking forward to 2020, but his latest comments were, "People want me to run." I said, Do you really want to run? You say people want you to. He said, "Yes, I'm having fun. I want to run." I said, Joe Biden said he's going to make a decision by January about whether to run. He called Joe Biden a dream.
Okay, good. Let's play a little bit of this so people can hear it.
Let me ask you about 2020.
Okay.
Who do you think your Democratic opponent will be? Joe Biden says he'll make a decision by January.
Well, I dream about Biden. That's a dream. Look, Joe Biden ran 3 times. He never got more than 1%. And President Obama took him out of the garbage heap, and everybody was shocked that he did. I'd love to have it be Biden.
You know, a lot of people have said that sort of Biden's style and the president's style are similar in certain ways. And Biden's this sort of straight talker, got a little swagger. You remember, I mean, it's a running joke how the two sort of old men were going to mix it up.
Yeah,
I think
didn't
Biden,
they threaten like a fist fight?
Take him outside.
Right?
Take him outside. Yeah. So why do you suppose he's sort of chopping at the bit at the prospect of running against Biden?
Well, I mean, they're two extraordinarily colorful characters. As you know, I mean. So that would not lack for drama, that race, yes. For sure. But yeah, he said. I think says he would embrace that.
Did he talk about any other possible competitors or anything else about the 2020 election?
Biden was the first one we mentioned, and he certainly was more than happy to talk about that.
Very interesting. Jeff Glor, fantastic interview, great insight into the president. Really appreciate you coming by.
Okay, sure.